Okay, here I am. I'm at Tractor Supply. I have 4 weeks to build a go-kart, but I don't really have time to build the go-kart. I only have time to build the boot that's going to go on the go-kart. So I go to Tractor Supply. I buy the floor model, $2,000. These people in the parking lot see me struggling. They help me get it in my car. Take it for a test ride at my house, giving it a shot. Let's see if it works. It's 3-speed with reverse. It's the perfect base for what I have to do. I've accepted the challenge from Phantom Rider Boots to make a boot go-kart for my annual go-kart event that takes place in the first week of July. In this case, it's the 12th of July, which was yesterday. But this is about 4 weeks ago, and like I said, I ran out of time to really build a go-kart from scratch, and I thought this would be the perfect basis. It's small enough. It's already together, and these are the boots that I have to model. These are Phantom Rider boots with the Phantom, which is the skull, and I have to make those boots. And so I'm going by eye, and what you see me doing here is this is pencil rod or 1/4-inch steel rod, which I had a lot of it laying around, and here defining the shape of the boot just by using the boot that I have and trying to fit it around this particular vehicle. You'll notice that I made these steel hooks that hang onto the go-kart itself. I'm going to keep calling it a go-kart, but it's a Jeep or whatever we want to call it. Make this steel frame to hang on it, and then on top of that, I'm going to add the foam, and the foam is going to become the structure of the boot itself. While I'm working with the foam, I'm developing different techniques. This isn't something that I've done a lot before, so I'm developing a lot of these techniques in real time. I know ultimately my goal is to cover the thing with fiberglass, but I need to make the volume, and this is how I make the volume, just using this pink foam insulation, a little bit of hot glue where I can, and the Titebond expandable foam for filling in cracks. And now you see with squeeze clamps I'm creating the gesture of the boot itself. Now I broke it into 2 sections, the bottom part of the boot, which I believe is going to be really more of the actual fiberglass structure, and then the upper part, which I would need to be able to see through. In my mind, I would make that out of screening. And now here, this is a technique I've never done. I just developed it while I was working. I got the styrofoam to a stage. Now I needed to add some structure to it. Again, going back to the extreme foam from Titebond, I covered that with packing tape, and now I could build up the structure with extreme foam. I need about 1-inch thick layer to be able to sculpt, and this expanding foam comes out of the gun at about 1 inch. It'll expand up to probably about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. It doesn't expand as much as you'd expect. It expands out of the gun, and that's about as big as it might get. It does swell a little bit if in concentrated areas. This is Titebond's industrial application. With these foam guns, you could clean the gun and reuse it over and over again. And it comes in different colors for different applications in the Titebond universe. Some's for filling in cracks in windows, some's for filling in gaps in walls, and the various different uses. And the colors are the indications. But in this case, I'm just using it as the structure of my object. And I'm building it up so that I can then carve it back. And as I carve it back, sometimes I get too thin, sometimes I need more volume. So I could always carve it away, but if I needed to add more, I just crack open the case and just spray it on there. Now here, this is a little bit of a drone shot from in my shop while I'm carving. Just thought it might be interesting. My shop is currently a mess with all the different projects I have going on. The car in the background, you'll see my Woody is really coming along, and it's really taking up a lot of space. But here I'm just using, I think that's a Fisker's machete that I got at the hardware store. And now it's time to fiberglass. And this is matting, fiberglass, heavy matting that I got from my buddy Anthony. It was at his flea market that he had. And of course I'm using Totalboat as my epoxy binder. And because this matting was so thick, I just soaked it in Totalboat and applied it. So I cut it into these small pieces and just dropped it in the bucket full of Totalboat that was prepared and mixed, and I'm just dropping these squares on one at a time. On this horizontal surface, it was nice because it would just stay in place, but as I got into it, now you could see how hard it is. You could hear that. This was the first batch. and then I have to keep adding it as I go around. On these vertical surfaces, it was a little bit more difficult. I had to wait till the epoxy tacked up. So in the meantime, I just used these bamboo skewers to keep the pieces in while the epoxy began to tack up. And Mike is working on sanding down what's already cured. Mike keeps sanding while I keep adding more and more patches in different spots. Now this is probably a day or two later. This took about a week's worth of epoxy and patches. And you could see I'm building up this whole surface and this texture. This texture is something everybody seems to like. I thought that I might go over the entire texture and smooth it out, but as I got into it, I really just added more and more Totalboat epoxy on top of it. Here you see I use more of a finer mesh. Actually, when I bought the original roll from Tony, it came with this belting, which I'm holding there right in the middle. You can see the heavy mesh, and now this is the fine mesh that I got from Totalboat, and I filled in a lot of the details with the finer mesh. So that upper edge, which is going to hold the structure for the upper part of the boot, I added the belting, and then on top of that I used the small mesh to blend it. And now here I use the small mesh as well. So I added the small mesh there. You can see it showing. It kind of disappears when it's only just one layer, especially the thin, small stuff. And now, instead of trying to smooth out the entire thing completely, I softened a lot of the bumps and lumps by adding some thickening agent to the Totalboat itself. And this is a thickening powder. It keeps the epoxy from falling off of the vertical surfaces, but it also starts to blend the bumps and the lumps. And now what I need to do is, since the foam was the only agent holding the wire frame onto the inside of the boot structure, I need to begin to epoxy the bottom edge where the wire and the pink styrofoam intersect. I have to be sure that the upper boot structure doesn't rip off of the frame that holds it to the top of the Jeep. And that's why I'm adding badges of epoxy and fiberglass to create more of a bond. And now, since the fiberglass sawdust powder is getting all over the shop, I brought it outside. Mike sanded it for about an hour, and now I'm using this. This is a shower sealant. Chris from Hatch Designs suggested I try this. It fills in a lot of the gaps and the bumps. Now, this is my first test drive of the Jeep with the boot structure on top of it outside. Now, that boot structure is very, very solid, just like a fiberglass rowboat. I could hit it with the hammer very hard and it wouldn't even dent it. So it ended up becoming very strong and obviously kind of heavy. All in, the whole structure probably weighed in at about 75, 80 pounds. And now it's time to design what's going to become the upper, the part of the boot that's going to create the area where the image of the skull would go. If you could remember, in the beginning there was a skull on the upper part of the boot. And I'm using bits and pieces of 1 inch by 1 inch angle iron, and I'm welding them together. Keeping them short, I'm able to make a gradual curve around the whole open spot. And if you remember, I put a lot of epoxy up there to keep that structure nice and strong. And now this is the interface for what's going to go up in the air. And you see these are my uprights that I begin. You can hardly see them with the busy visual, but there's an upright right at the front of the boot and right at the back of the boot. And now here you can see how that framework just removes right out. It's just held in there by gravity. And now I need to mimic that top curve of the boot's upper. And here I have some more pencil rod, and I'm bending it on my makeshift bending jig on the table by hand. And now I've bent two pieces that are the same, and I'm cutting them to match each other's length. That's going to basically create that opening at the top of the boot where your foot would slide through. And now I need to weld it, and by just holding it what feels right, in a position of what feels right, I weld it, and now it's up and open. And there you can see I'm just fortifying my welds, and now that gets welded to the top of the two uprights. This will all become clear in just a minute. It's a little visually confusing because you just see little lines in space with all the busyness in the background. And now here you see, when I stand it up, this is going to become the framework that carries the image of the upper part of the boot. I wanted it to be lightweight and also be able to see through it. So I got door screening material from Home Depot, and this is 72 inches wide, and it was wide enough to go around one half and then the other half. And what you see me doing is thinking and trying to figure out what's next. I'm making this up as I go along, but I realized I just squeeze clamp this onto one half of the frame, and by squeeze clamping it and getting it taut, I can then apply Totalboat Thixo. Comes right out of the tube, mixed through the tip. I'm adding this right through, and I'm just pushing it right through the mesh onto the frame, and that worked perfectly well. And I'm just cutting away what I don't need. I eventually put some tape to get that all nice and finished edge look. And now here's the other side, and you can see that's the waste. Obviously what gets glued to the frame. Everything past that gets cut off. And here you see me applying more Thixo, and I started wearing the rubber gloves. This way I could just wipe it right in through the mesh right onto the frame. And then that became the way. Now this is the boot after the shower gel has cured. I've sanded it just to get rid of some more and more of the bumps. And I'm just using some Rust-Oleum, a flat brown. And for the upper, I'm just using Rust-Oleum, a flat white, on a roller. Have you ever seen an advertisement on the window of a bus where you can't see in, but you could see out? That's what my inspiration was for this. I figured if I painted an image on top of the white paint on the outside, it would be difficult to see through it, but me being inside as the driver, I'd be able to look out. Now this is just a little projection camera that I got on Amazon, and you're able to connect your phone right to it, and I can project an image right onto the upper. And in this case, it's obviously the image of the boot, and I was able to project that on there. And then just using spray paint right out of the can, I'm able to mimic. And I turned the light on just to check my design. And there you can see I'm just filling in the design. It didn't fit perfectly well on it, but I was able to improvise the bone shapes at the bottom. And you almost couldn't tell the difference. And after seeing it, I realized I needed more of an almond color, so I went and got some almond. And now this is me just giving it a test fit, dropping it in there. It was fairly strong. It was really surprisingly strong. And just doing some comparison. And that busy pile of bones underneath the face, you could see how I improvised it on the bigger boot. And just keep looking at my still life, and I'm just trying to render it. And now this is an interesting solution. I had to add stitches on my paint job. I realized early on this was going to be very campy. I wasn't going for a perfect rendition of a boot. But I thought this would be a clever concept. How am I going to add the stitches? And so I just mocked up this little roller wheel on a handle like a pizza cutter. And then I was able to add what amounted to stitches. I cut that out of a little knee pad, just neoprene. Cut that on the bandsaw. And now here how you see I'm able to apply the stitch paint. Just roller and stitch it, stitch it, stitch it, stitch it. Didn't come out perfect, but it still looks good from 10 feet away. Now this is the HH logo that's going to be on the finger pole. That's the branding. These are Phantom Rider boots by Double H. And there you go. And I just painted with the Rust-Oleum brown. I soaked the cardboard. And I'm finishing that edge with some leather that I cut. This is a thin leather so that I could wrap it around it. And I'm creating the stitches around the finger poles. I used number 90 3M spray glue on that leather on the edge. Some Thixo, and I just squeeze clamp that in place and let that cure. And it's really starting to come together. I'm really happy with it. Now this is 2 days before the go-kart event. Papa Chad has come to hang out pre-race, and now we're taking this for a very first test ride out in the field. I'm making sure I fit through the doorway, and Keith was manning the camera. He did a great job. And now here I am ripping down the driveway. It works great. Nothing fell off it. It handles well. It's a little heavy. That's to be expected. Now here I am ripping around the yard. Remember in the beginning of the video I was ripping around the same spot before the boot. Now here I am. And now it's race day. Here I am just testing the track out before the crowd gets there. And you could see how when the sun shines through it, you could see through the mesh, but when the sun shines on it, you can't see through it. And that was the illusion I was going for. And in person, you really can't really see through it. It's just on camera, it seems to make it more invisible. This was a lot of fun to build. A lot of challenges, a lot of different materials to combine together to make one object. A lot of engineering, a lot of inventiveness. And big thank you to Double H Boots and Phantom Rider and Carolina for letting me build this boot. Now this is race day. This is the 6th annual Domestic Go-Kart Day. And everybody brings a handmade go-kart. And it's great because so many people stepping outside their comfort zone. Look at Paul Jackman's. That's Paul Jackman's Carolina work boot. And now this is Derek from Malden's Double H Cowboy boot, 3D printed. There's Musty. And this is me pulling out of my spot. It's amazing to see this thing go in reverse. Everybody was laughing. This was a lot of fun. This was a great race day. This is the 6th one and nobody got hurt. No accidents, and everybody had smiles on their face all day long. It was a real beautiful day. And if you showed up and you were there, thank you guys so much for making it a wonderful day and making it the event that it has become. So thank you all very much. Don't forget to follow me on Patreon for some behind the scenes stuff. And thank you, Double H Boots, Carolina, and Phantom Rider.